on, Doc. Come on over here. Come on in. Asia, act like you. Okay, very good. Miss Sherry, good seeing you again. So this is one of those times, Miss Sherry. One of those times, yes, ma'am. Well, good afternoon once again, and thank you so much for being here. On Friday, August the 4th, the afternoon of Friday, I had a mayoral briefing. And the mayoral briefing, of course, was with Homeland Security, of course, the National Weather Service, all department leadership and partners to respond to issues, crises in the city of New Orleans. That briefing was about 2 hours. I left that briefing. It was all about excessive heat, the impacts on the city of New Orleans, the thought of the heat not slowing down, and the overall impact that it could have and is having on the city of New Orleans, our residents, as well as visitors in our community, but most importantly, the most vulnerable in our city. Had that briefing on Friday, and over the weekend, it really kept me just unable to sleep. Just thinking about the challenges, thinking about the unprecedented times that we're living in and having to live through. Yesterday, meeting with my senior leadership team, it became very apparent that the city of New Orleans needed to be proactive relative to the excessive heat that is, again, not going to slow down. The National Weather Service issued yet, as you know, another excessive heat warning. That is, temperatures that feel like 115 to 120 degrees. Not only for today, but the reality is it's not slowing down. We know that, as I just mentioned, this will not be the last heat advisory or excessive heat warning that we will experience this summer. What is uniquely to the city of New Orleans, and particularly being on the front lines of climate that has already changed, is that we're in the midst of hurricane season, but now in the month of our critical times as we face hurricanes, tropical storms, or weather inclements that come our way, which makes this even more of a priority and one in where I stand as mayor, but even with my team, one that is critical times for us to be proactive and to do everything that we can as a city to ensure that we're meeting our people where they are, meeting the most vulnerable, and also putting in safeguards to prepare ourselves for what could come our way. But what is in our way is excessive heat, and the fact, again, we're in the middle of hurricane season. So far this summer, the coroner has reported 6 heat-related deaths. We understand even the nuances around the coroner being able to identify deaths associated with heat exhaustion. Dr. Vegno will speak to you more about that and other leaders who are standing with me this afternoon. We also know that the effects of these hazards disproportionately, again, affect the most vulnerable in our community. Our young, our old, homeless, and even seasoned, I said old, I'm some seniors, but homeless, as well as our low-income communities of color in the city of New Orleans. Also, a significant portion of our population of our city, in terms of living with disabilities and chronic illness. We know, again, the disparity gaps that exist in these areas in terms of disabilities, as well as living with chronic illness in our city. These hot temperatures can become life-threatening if the proper precautions are not taken. What we're doing here as a city taking the necessary precautions so that we can respond in real time and as necessary to meet our people again where they are with the resources and tools, the best that we can do in these unprecedented times. And unprecedented not just for the city of New Orleans nor the state of Louisiana, but this country. We know that. We also know that we owe it to one another to take this seriously, which is why my administration filed and I signed an emergency declaration for the ongoing unprecedented heat through October 1st of 2023. Again, wanting to get us through hurricane season. And again, while there has been no federal or state declaration at this time on excessive heat, we do understand and we recognize that the heat has become an unparalleled, ongoing crisis for the city of New Orleans, and of course across the country. So through this emergency declaration, the city will ensure that our New Orleans Recreation Department, all of our locations are open 7 days a week through the rest of the summer. Okay. We will also activate resources and personnel to support our unhoused outreach efforts. And this is on a daily and on an ongoing basis relative to this heat emergency. The city will also be able to open emergency contracting to complete emergency repairs, to protect city employees, outdoor workers, and first responders as we need to relative to extreme heat in our city. This is exactly why you've heard me and my team over and over talk about our fund balance. One, that this administration ensured that we were great stewards over the fiscal purse because, again, we're in the middle of, on the front lines of climate change, and this is yet another example of how we need to be able to stand up in real time to defend ourselves and our people in terms of what could come our way, but also what is now a part of our environment of existing conditions. So with that, I am going to ask several members of the team to step forward. This is teams of leadership team, partners, to give you more information. And as you know, we always go into Q&A, but right now I'm going to ask Mr. Benjamin Shute to come forward, and he is representing the National Weather Service on behalf of the City of New Orleans and the federal government. Thank you, Ben. Come on up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for having me here this afternoon. I'd like to start with, as the Mayor mentioned, we are enduring an unprecedented extended period of deadly heat. This is not a typical New Orleans summer. And no person alive in the city has ever experienced a summer like this in the city. And so I wanted to go through a number of facts that have occurred over the course of the last couple of weeks, if not months, as we went into the summer. Records are being shattered all across southeast Louisiana and coastal Mississippi every single day. At a minimum, many of them are being tied, if not shattered. And so July, for starters, though it's now August, was the warmest July on record for the city. And it was the second warmest month ever for the city of New Orleans. So when you think about that as a starting point, as we've already had this record heat in place for over a month. At the airport, we have had 9 of 10 days above 98 degrees. 4 of those have been over 100, and the last 3 were 100 degrees. Today, before I arrived here, the high was 97, which also tied the high for today. So we can throw on another record on top of there. The airport has never recorded 4 days in a row of 100, though it doesn't look like we're going to do that today. We are looking at forecasts for temperatures in the upper 90s and the low 100s through possibly the weekend, if not the next 5 to 10 days. The airport has never recorded 5 days in a row of 98 or higher, and we broke that record yesterday. We have broken or tied record high temperatures in the last 6 days. including, again, like I mentioned today, the 97 that we tied. The temperature has only dropped under 80 degrees once in the last 8 days. And 5 of those 8 days were the warmest overnight temperature for that day. Heat indices have reached or exceeded 115 in each of the last 4 days. And here's the fact, if you want to think, a lot of those temperatures are based off the airport, which is at Kenner. So you could say, well, does that really represent what's going on here in the city? So let me give you some information about Audubon Park, which has a record that goes back to 1894. So within a very extensive climatic record there, we are on track for the hottest summer on record, and we've already had the hottest start to August on record. So with all those numbers, you can see that this isn't a normal, typical summer. It isn't just another heat wave. This is something that no one in this area has seen or witnessed or lived through before. And so before this heat emergency is over, my last statement is this is likely to continue, and we're likely to continue to shatter records or tie records or go through these same types of conditions at a minimum for the next 5 to 10 days. A lot of the computer models are not showing any breakdown of this heat dome or the pattern. There may be the opportunities for a few more cooling showers as we get later on into the week or early next week. But as a whole, this pattern looks to be locked in place for quite some time. So with that, I'll end my statement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Colin?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Please treat this heat extremely seriously. It's important now more than ever to stay prepared as we approach peak hurricane season in mid-August. Now is not the time to be complacent. In fact, it's time that we redouble our efforts to face not only heat, extreme heat, as you've already heard and everyone out here has felt, but also to realize that we are indeed approaching the height of hurricane season. I'd like to thank Mayor Cantrell for her exceptional leadership throughout this ongoing heat wave. We've actually been responding to this since June. It's been something that we've been able to manage, and I don't anticipate that changing at all. This just opens up some new avenues and resources for us to be able to continue this, knowing that we're moving into a time of year that can be extremely unpredictable in our area. As you heard from the mayor and from the National Weather Service, this will not be the last excessive heat warning that we have had today or that we've experienced this summer. It's obviously caused a lot of concern. In the event of a major or catastrophic hurricane, any significant power utility disruption while under these extreme heat conditions will likely greatly increase the likelihood of injury or death, especially among the elderly, the young, and the vulnerable due to heat-related illness. The likelihood that evacuation decisions will have to be made taking into account utility disruptions and extreme heat, including for low-level storms, decisions will have to be made early. One of the biggest challenges has been to try and figure out how to sustainably incorporate heat relief into regular city operations and services. These heat waves have had longer-term frequency and duration, and these events could remain high going forward. There are two main objectives to this declaration: continued extreme heat response and enhanced preparations ahead of peak hurricane season. For continued extreme heat response, we're working on emergency procurements for any type of repairs or supplies that we may need that we don't know about right now, and that's the important part of this. Our Department of Property Management has done an excellent job in keeping up with many facilities, some of which have their age to them, and they are maintaining the systems that we have. But we don't know what's going to happen a week from now. We don't know what's going to happen next month. So we need to have that flexibility. The declaration allows us to further reach out to state and federal partners and anyone else that's out there where we can collect and coordinate more data. One of the things we're worried about is there's always a lag in data with heat-related illness and with heat-related deaths. We want to make sure that we're on the front line of understanding what the true effect of this is, how many calls are coming into 911, how many calls EMS and fire are responding to, the police are responding to, how many issues are we having at the coroner's office with decedents that end up there, victims potentially that end up there. Those are the things, we need to collect all those and have a better eye on that. This will allow us to do that. Jen's going to talk about the senior facility ordinance, and by declaring the communication that's going to have to come from these facilities to let us know that they're okay. We don't want people slipping through the cracks because of something as simple as a broken air conditioner. We're not going to let that happen. It opens up our Reserve to Essential Employee program that we've been working on since Ida. If we have employees from other departments in the city that can help us, staff a cooling center, pass out water to the unhoused or to the vulnerable, that's what we want. And this allows us to do that as well. And we'll continue to work with Nate and the Office of Homeless Services to develop training for those employees or volunteers to help us with that outreach. I think that this stabilizes our weekend plans for heat relief through October 1st, meaning that we're able to coordinate with Larry and Nord C to make sure that we have facilities open during these hours, till 7, 8, 9 p.m. to make sure that people have a place to go, a respite, a place to grab a bottle of water, and to cool off. We'll also transition one of those, probably Rosenwald, into an overnight cooling center. And that's going to be available for folks, potentially the unhoused or anyone else who has an issue and needs someplace overnight to cool off. Now, as part of hurricane season and what we're doing at the height of hurricane season, we obviously are going to take some of those cooling center sites, we're putting generators on them. We're not going to waste any time with waiting to do that. We're going to put generators on these facilities so we have continuity of power in the event of a storm. We remember that Ida clearly took out all the transmission into New Orleans and knocked out all of our power. Can you imagine what that would be like after the last couple of weeks, months that we have had in this city? We saw suffering after Ida. I don't think that even compares to the potential that could be out there right now and what we're looking at. So you could say that these are pre-staged emergency resource centers. We want to make sure that that power is there. And that's not just for a major hurricane like Ida. If many of you recall back to 2012 and Isaac, tropical storm / slightly Category 1 hurricane, it took out the distribution lines in New Orleans, not the transmission lines, caused power outages for 7 to 10 days. So this could be a low-level storm that could have the same impacts with this heat, and that's what we're trying to really deflect, head off, and try and address. I think that this clearly sends a message to our state and federal partners, this declaration, that we will be looking very closely at every hurricane that comes through, every tropical event, and have to make decisions about evacuation, sheltering in place, and others very early. And I've spoken to the Governor's Office of Homeland Security as well as other parish directors about this. I think that we are on the cutting edge of what is about to probably start happening in parishes across the state, and we've already seen some declarations around the country. So we've been working with NORD to identify the locations for expanded hours. I have a full list here, but I want to get to everybody on stage, on the stage here, and let them brief out to you. You can find these at ready.nola.gov. We have 9 locations, 9 rec centers identified right now. Ready.nola.gov. You can also sign up for alerts there. You can sign up for alerts by texting NOLA Ready to 77295. If you prefer life-saving messages in Spanish, you can text ESP to 77295. As I mentioned, Rosenwald will probably be our overnight center. We're still evaluating that. Our NOLA Ready website, again, ready.nola.gov, has the heat relief map that has a lot of these resources already plotted out on it. We're going to continue to amplify that and continue to update that. I'd like to thank the media and the public for sticking with us on this, and we're going to do the best that we can for our residents and for our community to make sure that we get through this heat and through hurricane season. And these are just unprecedented times. And of every city that I've ever lived in, and I've lived here for 27 years, I don't know of another community that I feel more comfortable handling this with, but we just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make that happen. Thank you. And
Unprecedented times.
Sorry.
I'm going to ask Austin Feldbaum to come forward. He is, of course, he's a part of our Homeland Security team, focusing on hazard mitigation for the administration. Austin, come on.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Colin. So we've just heard from the Weather Service some of the stats and some of the figures about what's going on this summer. You know, what's becoming increasingly clear is that the long-term trend is that our climate is consistently heating up, and that with less and less uncertainty, we can say that in the future decades, we are going to have to deal with this more and more often. So it is on us to start preparing and thinking through that. And the good news is that we've been working on this issue for quite some time. Colin's just started to talk about some of the actions that the mayor's authorized to take today and in the coming weeks to deal with this year. But I want to talk a little bit about the long-term strategy that we've been developing, especially since and incorporating the lessons from Hurricane Ida a few years ago. So, you know, addressing and combating extreme heat is a key part of our hazard mitigation plan and our climate action plan, both. And this takes place in the form of multiple different areas and focus points that include our power grid and the resilience of our power grid. Since Hurricane Ida, the city's been working with the Department of Energy on a comprehensive effort to plan and modernize our power grid, evaluating solar energy, battery storage, new technologies, and smart grids that might be appropriate for our context and help us avoid these widespread long-term power outages like we saw after Hurricane Ida. We're also working with local partners like the Together New Orleans Community Lighthouse Initiative and others to amplify and accelerate deployment of solar power across our city-owned facilities and private facilities, both to support our climate action goals and to have a broader distribution of resiliently powered facilities that we can use as cooling centers, as resource centers for our community after disasters. With all of this, we're focusing on the most vulnerable in our community, working with partners like Unity, focusing on elders, folks in permanent supportive housing, the unhoused, because we know that those folks are the most vulnerable to being impacted. We're also leaning on nature-based solutions, including the city's recently completed reforestation plan and all of the green stormwater infrastructure work that you're probably familiar with. We've recently committed about almost $1 million in bond funding to the first round of tree planting being implemented by Parks and Parkways, and we have pending applications with the USDA for another 30 million or so to really scale up the tree planting as we're still working to recover the canopy that was lost during Hurricane Katrina. In all of this, we're focusing on equity. The planning and the study work that we've done has highlighted the areas of the city that are most in need of these additional green infrastructure. Related to that, we've recently joined the Smart Surfaces Coalition, which is a multi-year project to cool cities using smart surfaces that include removing pavement, replacing it with permeable materials, other sorts of strategies that can help us manage heat, manage stormwater, and do it in a sustainable and cost-effective way. That collaborative is going to draw an international pool of expertise, knowledge sharing with our peer cities, and really help us accelerate these efforts. We're also working with RTA on our built environment, looking at our transit stops. We understand that folks, because of their transportation needs, might, spend more time outside, be more exposed to extreme heat. And so we're working on deploying shade structures and looking at our transit system in its totality. Another area I want to highlight for y'all is buildings, both our public buildings and private buildings, working to modernize them and increase their energy efficiency, because that is the first line of defense against this extreme heat. I want to celebrate last year the state of Louisiana adopted the most recent international building code and implemented a procedure to keep that code up to date in the future. That is a huge accomplishment, and it is going to help us to stay up to date with the most advanced methods for both wind resistance and energy efficiency. We're working full steam ahead through the Mayor's Infrastructure Task Force to plug into all of the different funding that is coming down through the bipartisan infrastructure spending and other bills. including the Solar for All program, which is we're collaborating with the state. It's getting a big infusion of cash. And also looking forward to the full implementation of the city's Healthy Homes Ordinance, which takes effect in 2024, and which for the first time gives us a policy tool to help make sure that renters can stay cool in the places where they live. The last thing I'll mention is that climate science and our understanding of these dynamics is evolving. And in support of that, the city is helping to take measurements. So we've deployed the Weather STEM network, the local system of weather stations around town that is giving us a better than ever, more granular view of our urban heat island and what that effect looks like around town. Similarly, we're collaborating with citizen science initiatives through folks like Healthy Community Services and IC Change, who are doing the work in neighborhoods and helping us to understand what that impact is on the ground. So all of these efforts come together in the long term and are part of our overall strategy. I'll turn it back to the mayor.
Thank you so much, Austin, very much. Great job. And I want to ask Dr. Jennifer Avegno. Dr. Avegno?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it goes without saying that extreme heat is a serious public health threat in New Orleans and really across the country. We've certainly seen that in other cities. Particularly has been reiterated multiple times for our most vulnerable population, so older adults, folks who have limited economic resources, the unstably housed, and those with chronic medical conditions. It's really important that everybody take preventive measures to protect yourself, protect others from the adverse effects of heat. Stay hydrated, avoid strenuous activities, wear light clothing, seek shade or preferably air-conditioned places, and remember to check in on your vulnerable neighbors and family members, children, those with chronic medical conditions. So some of the dangers and problems that heat can cause, there's a number of heat-related illnesses, and they can be very subtle, and they can present like, I think I have a cold, I think I have a flu, I think I ate something bad and now I'm throwing up. But that can be a sequela of a heat illness, and it can progress all the way through heat exhaustion to heat stroke. Not only can it produce new conditions, but it can worsen chronic conditions, particularly cardiovascular diseases and respiratory diseases, certain medications that people are on, their effects can be exacerbated in the heat, and it can significantly increase your risk of dehydration, electrolyte imbalances, and infections. And I want to just tell a personal story. I was driving down Napoleon yesterday in the morning when it was already very hot, and I saw a gentleman clearly exercising, wearing one of those sweatsuits that look like a garbage bag. You know the type, the reflective type. That is incredibly dangerous. If you are going to exercise, and exercise is great, please don't make it any worse on your body than it already is. Go in the morning, go at night, go to a gym. If you're not a gym membership, Nordsea has some wonderful gyms that you can use. Get in one of their pools and exercise that way. Please do not put yourself in additional danger. That is not a smart way to lose weight. It's a real easy way to end up in the hospital. When we have increased demand for electricity and water, again, as Colin referenced, that leads to power outages, electricity shortages. Fortunately, here, we have not had brownouts, but we know in other cities on the coast, New York, California, where they have power outages because of increased demand, that could be a tipping point in this heat for far worse outcomes. We also want to remember that this is a stressful time for many who are staying inside. It might be isolating. It might cause mental stress as folks are either avoiding outdoor interactions because of the heat or they're energy insecure and wondering, how long can I run my air conditioner unit? How can I afford that versus turning it off and seeing how I fare? So let's be mindful of that. Please, if you see someone that you think is experiencing a health emergency, call 911, and I know Director Salmeron will talk about that. There's also ways you can, in your home, reduce your energy usage and also keep things a little bit cooler. Don't wash your clothes in the middle of the day. Wash them at night. Turn on your oven at night when it's going to have a less effect on the overall power grid. Keep your thermostat at 78. I know that sounds really hot for a lot of people. And I'll just say my dad kept ours at 80 for most of my childhood, so thanks, Dad, you prepared me well. But once you get used to it, and particularly when you are comparing it to the outside temperature, 78 feels nice and cool. If you've got fans, you can use those to help mitigate that. That saves money and it lessens the burden on the grid. As Austin mentioned, we have a healthy homes ordinance that's coming into effect in 2024. I wish it was in effect now, because one of the things that that ordinance, and again, thanks to the mayor's leadership and the council's partnership, it requires air conditioning to a specific level to protect our renters. This is really a fundamental right, and so we'll be real excited. I urge all of our landlords, even if it's not in effect right now, this is something you can easily do to protect your renters. We encourage folks who are energy insecure, who maybe don't have access to regular AC, or can't afford to run it 24/7, to utilize the cooling centers, and encourage your friends and family to do the same. In public buildings, libraries, any public building could be potentially a place to cool off. I know Director Fields is going to talk and has been doing amazing work with our unhoused population, but they face the greatest burden of the extreme temperatures. When your body cannot cool down at night because the nighttime temperature doesn't go below 80 degrees or feels like 85 or 90, your body cannot regulate temperature appropriately, and that leads to further risk. When there is no break in that for weeks, if you are outside, it's incredibly dangerous. And so that's why we're working very closely with the Office of Homeless Services and Strategies, with NOSEP, with community development, with our service providers, to not only make sure that our shelters have expanded capacity, but to really aggressively use every potential housing resource we can to get folks off the street. Nate in particular and some of our staff at NOHD are in the encampments every single day, providing water, doing wellness checks, making sure that those folks know that there are places that they can go. We've been working really closely with NOSEP to provide health-based recommendations to support activations of heat emergencies like the mayor has done today. We have looked at thresholds from other cities, such as Phoenix, that have long-standing relationship with heat activations. And this is just a shift in our planning. As we've got, infectious disease protocols, if we have hurricane protocols, now we want to make sure we have evidence-based scientific heat protocols. This will allow us, as Colin alluded to serve the vulnerable population that are regulated by our ordinance. This is putting the lessons learned from Hurricane Ida into direct action. What our nursing home and elderly living facilities ordinances will do with this activation is mandate daily check-ins with our staff to update us on the condition of the buildings and of their residents. They have to know who is there and make sure they can account for folks. And if there is any challenge, if somebody's AC is undergoing repair, if there's a generator that it needs servicing, if there's work being done to the building, we will know about it and can help direct resources so we can avoid some of the tragedies that we had after Ida. Please feel free to reach out if we've been already being proactive and checking up on some of the buildings that we knew were having work done. And just a reminder, heat kills more individuals worldwide than any other impact of climate change, more than floods, more than cold. So this is serious. Do not underestimate the seriousness of this current weather and take the steps to help your family and community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bagnall. And we're going to keep the briefings moving forward. I'm going to ask Chief Samaran, EMS.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I want to echo what was already said. I want to thank the mayor and other leadership for the attention that has been placed so far on heat. We have definitely remained front and center since this started, even before it started. We continue to have regular communication, regular coordination between departments to really respond to this unprecedented heat wave. And so I want to thank the mayor and everybody up here. We certainly we have no shortage of emergencies in the city. And so I think this administration has definitely proven its worth when it comes to responding to that. Extreme heat is dangerous because it can push your body temperatures beyond its limits and can cause permanent damage and even death if not treated. This is a very serious, serious thing. You really need to take this seriously. It is a life-threatening heat. Okay, so definitely take it seriously. EMS has seen a significant increase in the number of heat-related illness calls this summer. In an average year, we respond to 25 heat-related illness calls per month during the height of the summer, but this year it has quadrupled to around 100 calls per month. So we definitely have seen an increase in call volume for heat-related illness. Anyone is susceptible to heat-related illness, anyone. No matter if you're healthy or not, it's going to get to you at some point in time. The following people are at greater risk and need to pay extra attention. And as Doc already said, older adults, the very young, pregnant women, people with medical conditions or on certain medications, people living with limited personal resources or inadequate home cooling, and those that are unhoused. Do everything you can to prevent heat-related illness, including, as I said before in our briefings, stay hydrated. All right? Stay hydrated. Your body needs water to survive. So drink water early, often, and even if you're not thirsty. So stay hydrated. Juices and soft drinks are not a suitable replacement for water. You can replace electrolytes lost from sweating by eating salty snacks, salty healthy snacks, and electrolyte replacing stuff like Gatorade or Powerade or whatever sports drink you want. And avoid excessive alcohol in the heat. Alcohol and caffeine certainly decrease that when you're in the heat. Stay cool. Stay in a cool place if you're able to. Limit your strenuous outdoor activity during the hottest times of the day. If you work outside, take frequent breaks and cool off. Wear loose and light colored clothing and a hat. Use cool towels, cool showers and baths, or misting to stay cool. There are things that you can do to keep yourself cool, and so certainly do that. Know the signs of heat-related illness. Mild symptoms include profuse sweating, feeling weak and dizzy, nausea, vomiting, muscle cramps. As symptoms progress, you may stop sweating, become more confused or lose consciousness, and not able to drink fluids without becoming ill. If symptoms persist or get worse, go to your local emergency room or call 911. Obviously, you see that our call volume has gone up because many have succumbed to the heat, and we anticipate to see that as this heat continues. And most importantly, everybody needs to stay informed. Definitely call 311 if you have any needs, if you need information on where cooling centers might be or what resources might be available in the community. Go to ready.nola.gov and certainly sign up for the alerts as they contain very, very important information. I just want to reiterate, definitely, this is dangerous heat. And it's dangerous for everybody, no matter what your health status is. So please take it very seriously and stay hydrated. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. And I'm going to ask Nathaniel Fields, who is our Director of Homeless Outreach and Strategies for our city. Come on, Nate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for assisting. Thank you for your leadership and definitely being there when needed for homeless services and outreach. I really thank you for everything that you're doing. Also, thank you to the Office of Homeland Security, who have just been amazing partners, as well as the Health Department, who've just stepped up and gone above and beyond. We started this process July 30th of going out every single day, checking on the unhoused population and making sure that we are making sure they are awake, making sure they are drinking plenty of water, and also checking on those individuals who are on medication, because we don't talk much about that. On top of them not being able to have breaks, having proper fluid throughout the day if they're on medication, we have to really make sure that we're leaving behind multitudes of water so that they can have that water while taking this medication throughout the day, which dehydrates them. So we start our mornings off checking on those individuals, which off the top of my head, the 14 that I know of, I'm not only bringing them water, I'm also bringing them ice, and making sure they ate, making sure they are awake. The other piece that we have been doing is pushing people to go to the shelters and transporting them to the shelter locations, making sure that they are connected to those services and understanding that we are in this very nasty heat patch that we we want them to be connected to those services as best they possibly can if they will have them. Some persons have taken us up on it, hence the reason why our low barrier shelter is almost at capacity. And all of our other shelters have been stepping up to make sure that the beds are available for the individuals who are coming off the street. Big shout out to Unity's outreach team and Travelers Aid's outreach team for going out in the field alongside me and my staff person to make sure that these individuals are awake. The health department for following up on the most vulnerable population and making sure that they understand to use precautions and stay in shaded areas. Also a shout out to NOPD and also for the EMS staff who have been actually showing up within 5 minutes of a phone call to the locations when called upon. This is amazing, and I'm thankful that we have a staff and a team who takes this seriously as our mayor does. We have been going out here every single day, making sure that everyone is okay, and just since the 30th, passing out 2,309 bottles of water, 502 cases to the different shelters and cooling stations. And that's just my team. I'm not talking about all the other staff who have been going out. Just me and my one other person has been going out doing those numbers. You can only imagine how many bottles of waters the health department has given out, the EMS have given out, that NOCEF has given out. We have been going out here trying to make sure that people stay alive. Yes, we've had a couple of heat-related deaths, but we would have much more if we weren't doing these efforts to make sure that the individuals that we serve are okay, checking on them every single day and making sure that they understand that we are here to assist them. Our mayor took this and said, guess what, we have to do more. And when she says meet them where they are, I'm a director who goes out into the field and goes into the tents to make sure that these individuals are awake. This morning at 8:28, I didn't know that we were going to come in contact with an individual who didn't wake up today. I didn't know that today was going to start off that way, but it did. But I could not stop because I had another individual whose life I could save. And every person who stands behind me today is a part of that nucleus. Every person who is putting together this forum today is a part of that nucleus. And everyone who is watching, we need your assistance as well. Check on the most vulnerable population, the elder, the unhoused, and that person that you see every single day. Yes, they might be drinking alcohol. Yes, they might be doing drugs. All you have to say is, are you okay? Did you drink water today? This could save someone's life. Please be a part of that solution. We already know that the heat is a part of that problem. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. And I'm going to ask Larry Barabino Jr., who is our CEO of NORD, to come forth, and thank you for your just continued leadership and partnership.
Thank you.
Larry.
Good evening. As the mayor has said in the past, NORD has become an essential part of our emergency planning, our emergency response, and our emergency coordination. As we transition our recreational centers from our multipurpose programs throughout the week and throughout the year, our centers transition over to whether we're doing emergency housing, whether we're doing emergency warming shelters, and now we're doing emergency cooling shelters. Our rec centers are open, all 12 are open Mondays through Fridays from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. They're open for regular services. Anyone is welcome to walk in any rec center, not only just to cool off, but take advantage of the programs that are there. Our kids have returned back to school. Our summer camps are closed. So the centers are open, again, from 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night. On Saturdays, the normal hours of our center was on Saturdays from 9 to 12. But as you heard the mayor state, the centers will now be open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. at night on Saturdays and Sundays. 9 of the 12 will be open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. at night on Saturdays and Sundays as well, up until October 1st. Also with that, NORD swimming pools are open. Our 4 indoor swimming pools are open from technically all of our swimming pools open at 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. Right now, we're preparing to open our swimming pools on Sundays as well. Today, the swimming pools close at 2 p.m., but right now we're preparing to open the swimming pools up on Sundays as well. As we know, a lot of our lifeguards are high school students. They've transitioned, high school and college students, they've transitioned to return back to school. So now we're trying to assemble enough of them to come and work just the weekends to make sure that we can open our pools for the families of New Orleans. Our goal is to ensure that at any time, if anyone wants to get out of the heat, they'll be able to go to the nearest Nord Rec Center or pool in their community. We won't be able to open all of the pools during this time, but we will make sure that the 4 year-round pools are up and operational. Also with that, at least 6 of our seasonal pools will be open throughout the city, and that will be announced which ones will be open up until October 1st, 7 days a week. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that. Now, before we wrap up, and I talked about, of course, the leadership assembled here is also in the form of partnerships. And Together New Orleans has been a critical partner with the city of New Orleans, of course, dealing with this heat for sure, but also as the city has activated and utilized Wisner money as well as ARPA money to ensure that we have lighthouses throughout the city of New Orleans, and again, to be able to meet our people where they are. This afternoon, we have Miss Asia Ognavine, who is here representing Together New Orleans. So, Miss Asia, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In situations like this, I think of my grandfather. My grandfather was a bricklayer in the city. He and others of his generation laid the foundation for so many of the homes and buildings that we still occupy today. So I want to talk about bricks for building a new foundation. Mother Nature is no longer subtle about the impacts of climate change. Hurricanes are screaming at us. It's time to lay a new foundation. The sun is yelling down. It's time to lay a new foundation. Building that is going to require some bricklaying from all of us. Mayor Cantrell, you're laying bricks right now by calling attention to the fact that this extreme heat is an emergency. All the other leaders and departments in this room, you're laying bricks for that new foundation. Together New Orleans, our bricks are in galvanizing community and faith-based institutions to step up and fight for the future of the city. We've launched Community Lighthouse to build a network of 86 institutions in every neighborhood to have power independent of the grid and have trained volunteer teams so that we can respond in times of emergencies like these. 16 lighthouses are planned for the next 8 months. 3 are operating right now. That includes a site, St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, which is serving as a cooling center as we speak. None of that would be possible without your leadership, Mayor Cantrell. We feel the heat. Let's lay that foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Asia. So that has concluded our press briefing for you this afternoon. Again, focusing on the excessive heat and the emergency declaration that has moved forward on behalf of the city of New Orleans. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, John, and we'll answer questions. Questions?
Mayor Cantrell, I understand that NOPD, NOFD, the library, and criminal court is having issues with AC. Is the city doing anything to address that, get that AC working, especially those on our front lines?
Sure, as we've already reported to you time and time again, the issues that we have experienced with facilities in the city of New Orleans. And because of what we have experienced is why we're being very proactive here this afternoon. The city will continue to make the necessary repairs, getting in and building that capacity to do so. And it is truly a reflection, I would say, of decades of a lack of routine maintenance on many of our buildings in the city of New Orleans. That is a reality. And when you disinvest, you end up here. And what we're doing as a team and as an administration is making our facilities a priority, as we have since day one, but definitely given the existing conditions that we're under and moving through. it will require additional resources as well as manpower. And that's why this emergency declaration is so critical to our ability to respond in real time. That's why we're doing what we're doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you all. And we have to do our Spanish interpretation, so we can be quiet outside if you have like an individual question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks, everybody.
Yep, we'll send you the time. 11 should be there.